So it's 11:01. Maybe I can kick us off, and then I'll kick it over to Jill okay, Jill. So I just want to welcome everyone and thank you. Maybe I'll just check really quickly if there are so far any Spanish speakers on the phone that we need to get connected. We did turn interpretation on, so definitely, as always, just feel free to stop us if we have any issues, Amelia. And I think, perfect, thank you. She's in the interpretation channel, so we're going to communicate through reactions. So thank you all, welcome. I appreciate you all being here. This is the first time we've actually had a subcommittee meeting in a bit. We've met with like a sub-group recently with the city of Fresno to do some interviews for our, to try to select our contractor for the truck reroute study, which is, of course, as we all know, one of our CERT measures. And so we're so fortunate today, of course, to have the city of Fresno is going to lead this discussion, but have the IBI group here with us to discuss a little bit of their statement of work, which is really sort of at this point, logistically, in terms of getting next steps for the city moving forward. This is sort of one of our last logistical pieces, which is to work with you all to make sure we're all on the same page with the statement of work. So that we can move forward and actually enter into a contract to get this study going. And so I'll pass it to Jill to kind of start off the discussion and introduce folks, and we look forward to the discussion. So thank you. And I maybe before I start, hopefully everyone got all of the materials that we sent out. We did deliver hard copies, just so everyone else on the call knows. We did deliver hard copies to those who requested it, as well as our Spanish speaking resident participants. And then we did email a link out to everyone else. So just so you are all aware. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think Jess did a good job of kind of providing the overview for the meeting. We just wanted to get together, introduce the team that we chose to lead the truck reroute portion of this effort, and give you guys some time to ask any questions that you might have from the consultants, give you a little bit more info on our timeline and moving forward with the process. We have Mike and Catherine here, I believe, with the IBI team. And if they want to, kind of kick it off and talk about what they're proposing for the study. And then we can open up to any questions that anybody might have.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, can everybody hear me? Just a nod, okay. I'm Mike Arizabal with IBI Group. We were the consultants selected for this very important study for the city, especially related to AB 617. If I could just run through quickly our general scope of services and then highlight, what our major deliverables are for each task. I think we could go that way and then reserve some questions for after. So overall project management, we want to do a kickoff meeting. That's going to include at a minimum the city, the district, Fresno COG, and then the county of Fresno. And then we can include anybody else as necessary in order to kick it off in January or February, depending on when the contract is set up. We want to develop the work plan, update the project schedule. Right now, we're looking at an 18-month schedule, assuming a start date in January. So that would put us out to June of 2023, if we don't have any setbacks. So that's the initial schedule there. So we want to be able to set up bi-weekly project call meetings, couple that with notes and summaries. We'll set up a project file sharing system between all parties interested in this project. And then task 2, outreach and engagement. We've got Catherine Padilla and Associates. They're really crucial to our team, getting our, the project introduced to everybody involved, piggybacking on some of the efforts already created from the AB 617 steering committee. So we'll be able to differentiate the two efforts, and then also work in conjunction with everything else that's going on in this area. And Catherine could correct me if I'm wrong, but we're focusing on 3 major components of outreach. That's multiple modes of communication, understanding the Spanish speakers and the Hmong speakers, being able to communicate to them and reach out to to people who typically are reserved or don't really speak up in these type of studies. We want to make sure we reach out to them. The second is making engagement interactive, using action-oriented, interactive, or in-the-field outreach strategies. And then the third is being very visual to engage. Tools as 3D models or renderings are going to be incorporated and tailored and fit to remain consistent with the existing community characteristics. With that, Catherine will come up with her stakeholder and public engagement plan for review between the city and county. We want to make sure we have buy-off on all that before we start any in-depth outreach to make sure we're covering all the bases and interested parties. She'll start a project database that includes who the stakeholders are, whether that be chambers of commerce, local schools, who are the businesses, the truck operators, transportation, transit agencies, such and so forth. And then we'll develop a technical steering group and community advisory group. Technical steering group is going to be people like the city and the district to guide us on the technical aspects of the projects. And then the community advisory group is going to be, various project champions, residents, neighborhood councils, things of that nature. So in terms of major deliverables for outreach effort, we want the engagement strategy with the final version of it, the stakeholder coordination and engagement plan. We want to hold at least 6 meetings for the technical steering group, and then 6 additional meetings for the community advisory group. And then KPA will be holding up to 16 individual one-on-one interviews with stakeholder groups, along with interview guides and written summaries. And they'll be translated both in Spanish and Hmong. Catherine, I don't know if that covered it well. If you want to add any other highlights to our outreach effort, or just give some nuggets of information, that'd be great.
The only thing is, I thought we had some scope in there also for like pop-up events, and maybe we do that in conjunction with some of the stakeholder interviews. So maybe we do the stakeholder interviews in small groups. So there's lots of opportunities to refine the scope, especially after we look at the stakeholder analysis and determine what's the best way to engage people. So I think there's still a little room for refinement as long as we kind of stick to this amount of work, as well as the kind of the hours, look at how we use it, but we want to be as strategic as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. We are extremely flexible when it comes to, what the final product looks like, whether it be a community meeting or a pop-up event. We've learned from previous experience how effective pop-up events are. We've already got the foot traffic at certain, farmers markets or things of that nature that you already have a set group there, and we could target that way. So that we're definitely open to refining the scope in that way when we kick off this project. And then, so task 3, it's really important for this project is the development of a comprehensive existing conditions report. For us, creating this foundation of data is crucial for accurate assessment of the study area. So we'll use various literature review of things that have already been done in this particular area. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. So if there's data available, we will be requesting and obtaining that data. So we're going to identify various existing data sources, and then with the hopes of identifying any gaps in data, and those gaps we'll be able to collect new counts or new information, origin destination data. So once we get the complete picture of the data that we have, we could create a data collection action plan of where we need to find and fill in those gaps that I talked about previously. And then we want to talk about what are the existing physical characteristics and community impacts, identification of community impacts related to truck movements. We'll look at, various crash data within the study area. Also things from CARB, the Community Air Resources Board, Community Air Monitoring Plan for the South Central Fresno community. We'll be utilizing GIS along with the Calendaro screen to look at various things in terms of VMT impacts, roadway characteristics, pavement conditions, noise issues, things of that nature. And then we'll be able to do conceptual design. Our team of civil and traffic engineers will develop conceptual plans and truck turning templates along all identified new routes with samples at up to 10 different locations throughout the study area. The conceptual drawings will be planning level with the purpose of showing, what the cross sections would look like, and then improvements within the available right of way. And then moving on to task 4, we have our report of national best practices for accommodating trucks. So we already have a pretty comprehensive database of national best practices related to minimizing truck impacts in and around neighborhood communities. This database was created for our work on previous studies. And then we include literature from the Federal Highway Administration and then various departments of transportations across the United States and other national highway reports on discussing truck parking, truck demand management, using alternative delivery schedules, and neighborhood intrusion. So we've got a pretty robust set of best practices for accommodating trucks, especially within neighborhood communities. So we'll look at it from a land use and mitigation standpoint. And then finally, task 5, that's the recommended truck route. So the city has a truck route map currently. I think it was last updated in 2005. So a major deliverable of our project is to update that map with our new and revised and recommended truck routes throughout the area. So it'll be kind of culminating in a state of the system chapter of the implementation plan. This kind of includes what are the socioeconomic data, transportation policies, major truck origin destination patterns, roadway conditions, and regulatory framework. So this is going to be folded into our community strategies and implementation plan. This will also consider community needs, regional, county, physical and social barriers, safety, and statewide policy for funding frameworks. And then what is that timeline for implementation, including the technical steering group, community advisory group, the city, county, and district staff input. So that's kind of the way that we're going with this study. And the final deliverable will be a truck routing and implementation strategy, along with that revised City of Fresno truck route map. And then we'll be looking at the language for revising the City of Fresno truck reroute ordinance. And that runs through basically the scope of work. If anybody has any specific questions regarding the task or our generic approach, happy to answer them.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions and comments actually on this entire document.
Sure.
Well, first, Mike, thank you for submitting something so well written. It was worth my time to actually read it, which I can tell you I haven't said that comment very often in my entire time in 617. Under project management calls and meetings, you talk about the bi-weekly basis that you're going to have up to 20 meetings. In this process, I do not see anywhere where the community steering committee is actually mentioned. It's always agencies, and part of the process and part of the players in this game are actually us. So I was kind of wondering, why weren't we mentioned in this? And also too, on your first paragraph about second to last sentence, it talks about progress meetings and overall schedules. Can one of these entities do unilateral change orders on the process? And if that was to occur, how would everybody else notice? Your last paragraph on your second column on the first page, my big question about giving people information and share filing. Share filing is great, but what about hard copies for those of us that have ADA accommodations? And have you built in that process for printing out notes and mailing so people get them in a timely manner versus the day after a meeting, especially with the mail slowing down? And then your second page under file sharing system, how is that going to be accessible to everybody on the steering committee to look at so we can be abreast about what's going on? For example, every time somebody puts something in Google Drive or a share thing, I can't get into it. I'm doing things off my phone, off an iPad. I don't have a computer. So if you want me to read it, how am I going to read it? On the third page under stakeholders and public engagement plan, are you going to run your first paragraph? Are you going to give the community steering committee a look at your list of stakeholders? So if we have somebody that should be added, we know they're on there, and also to see, actually how good you guys are. And you talk about in your second paragraph under that title, you talk about focus groups and interviews with stakeholders. How many focus groups and who's going to determine the makeup of those focus groups?
Okay.
And I also would like to see, and are we going to be able to see your information boards before you put them out, or your slide presentation? Because that would be really interesting. And under your project database, your last sentence, the contact list will be updated on a regular basis. Can you define to me what a regular basis is? And who is the contact for that? Who's the manager of that contact list? Under technical steering group and community advisory group, once again, where is the community steering committee in the air district? On the next page, when something is so well read, written, I really enjoy it, guys. So I really read every single word. You talk about sending an email, letter of invite. That necessarily is not going to work. Or will it be in conjunction with hard copies, postcards, outreach in the project area, and to the property owners, not only to the people that are like currently living in a home or working in a business, but also the property owners? Because email only goes so far. I know when I get an email, I'll look at it and I'll forget it. But when I get a card, I put it where I need to be reminded of it in my day planner. So I can't, there's no getting away from it. Let's see. The other thing I've missed in this is school districts and schools. There's no mention about directly contacting schools, which I had a bit of concern about. And my final comment under task number 5 is I would add, you talk about the rounds of reviews for the draft and for public comment. You're only going to go out for 1 public review, which you really should do for 2, both a draft and then a final of the plan. You need to think about halfway through this process, presenting it to the public and saying, this is what we have so far. That way they know that way they're more active, because, people go, oh, they're doing a truck study, and all of a sudden it's going to come out of the blue. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to educate the public of not only the process of how this information is derived, but also about the process of engaging with the air district and engaging with the city. And I think the more engagement we do of here is where we're at, or here is where a draft is. Give us your comments. What are your feedback? At that point would be so much better than just coming to them and saying, this is the final plan. We're not going to change much of anything. I like things to be a little bit more proactive. Also, too, the way the city council's been going, you need to add at least a month and a half onto there. And also, you do not talk about the district planning review committees. I sit on District 1. I know there's District 3 and District 5. You also need to engage them in this process as well, and they're not mentioned anywhere in here. And with that, that's all my comments. But once again, thank you very much for writing a very competent piece of literature for me to read today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. We really appreciate those comments, and I understand all those concerns, and they're all really great comments. If you guys would allow me to just kind of run through some responses to those comments. So the steering group is definitely on our mind. It's part of, you know, the initial efforts before we even kick off is developing who are these stakeholders, who are the people that we need to talk to, who can we, you know, build off of some of their efforts already. So our list in this scope is fluid. We still can add a lot of people. We could delete some people. So we want to talk to folks who are really invested in this community and understand everything that's going on here so that we could include the appropriate parties in there. So the steering group will be a part of that technical steering group that we're going to be creating. So you guys will be included. In terms of change orders, I will let Jill respond to that one later. That's more on the administrative side. For hard copies, yes, we at IBI have direct costs baked into it that we could provide hard copies for everything that we do digitally, so that we get that out to whoever we need to get it out to. The file sharing system, we typically use SharePoint, and we do that via a link. But if you're having trouble accessing that, we do have other ways of sharing files and other programs that may be more conducive for mobile programs. So we'll discuss that as part of the project kickoff meeting, is finalizing what type of sharing system that we're going to use for this particular project. Are we going to give community steering a list of stakeholders? Yeah, so that's a part of our process. Is Catherine will attest to this. We want to talk to you guys because you guys already have a working database. We don't want to start from scratch. So there's a lot of great input and you guys understanding who the key players are that need to be a part of this study, as well as any other parallel study that's going on for AB 617. So we'll be able to wrap all that together and have your input on that, on developing that list. And that goes to who the focus groups are. As we develop, you know, these smaller groups, we'll look for your input on who should be included as part of those outreach and engagement events. And you will have an opportunity to review all boards, presentations, fact sheets before we share and put it out on the street. We definitely want that input, and we look for that input to make sure that you know, we're accurately depicting any kind of information that we're trying to share with the public. Regular basis for the contact list. Who is the manager? That will be Catherine and her team. They'll have a working database. When we talk about regularly updated, that's, you know, whenever we get new information, that database will be updated and will be shared with the team via the project sharing file system, whatever we determine that to be. And then email, letter. Yeah, we do use other methods. We can do mailers. We've done walking man tours previously because we worked in a community where, you know, no one really had access to laptops or smartphones. So we did walking mans where we put flyers on windshields, or we, you know, put flyers on actual doorknobs. So we have different ways of getting these mailers out there, and we understand it, and we're prepared to do that as well, and not only do digital. So we want to back it with, you know, our traditional walking the streets, getting the flyers out there, and then couple that with some of our digital capabilities to cast the widest net possible to get as many people involved as we can in this particular project. Let's see, contacting schools. Yeah, Catherine, that's a part of her list. That's one of the major players that she contacts when she's developing these lists. So what the list that we included in the scope wasn't exhaustive, but she can touch upon that if you want more detail on that. But yeah, schools are definitely an important part of this project. They are one of the sensitive receptors in this area, so we will be including them.
One question, excuse me for a moment.
Sure.
One question to Catherine then would be, do you have working relationships with the schools currently? Because I know the Air District has taken some time as far as actually reaching out to the school districts and actually the principals at the schools. How are you going to go about it where you get a faster response versus what the Air District has gone in the past? I can't hear you.
We don't have working relationships right now. Let me just back up a little bit, because where we start with this is a whole stakeholder analysis, as you've described, and identifying the schools and principals and all that would be part of our stakeholder analysis portion, and then matching I would say outreach strategies to those stakeholders is the most strategic way to make sure that people who, for example, should be contacted to be introduced to the study, identify who should be members of the CAC, identify what kind of outreach events we might consider as part of this scope. I'm not sure if outreach events are part of the scope. I need to take another look at that and what can be moved around. So those kinds of things are part of the stakeholder analysis. We do not have relationship with the schools right now, but when we do stakeholder analysis, I will work with whoever needs to be part of this strategy session to identify who the stakeholders are. And then from that, we'll start contacting people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I also do want an area of concern that I have is the area around Producers Dairy, because there are there's like, what was it, over 100 truck movements of big trucks in that area. So not only do I have a couple of neighborhoods that are directly impacted by these trucks, but also I think maybe 2 schools. So if I need to go knock on a door, I'll knock on a door for you when it's not raining.
Thank you. Let me just say, we have Thelma Herrera, who is our project manager with this, and she's also as part of this meeting. Thelma has a great deal of expertise in communicating with schools, and my other staff do as well. And I will attest, as you say, Lisa, the principals are the gatekeepers, and it takes multiple calls to get to gain the trust of the gatekeepers, and to then ask, do you have parent meetings or parent coffees that we could attend? And a lot of those meetings are virtual now. So we'll have to work on that as part of our stakeholder analysis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. So I think, let's see. Yeah, the comment about needing a draft and final, we could incorporate one more round within the final. So we'll just shift over some of that review time that we included on the draft and be able to provide 2 rounds of review. I think that's a good idea. And then city council, in our current schedule, I have a month in there, but you're saying that we should extend that by at least another 6 months, so I could revise that schedule and the refined schedule will be a part of the project work plan that I developed after the kickoff meeting, after we've all, had a chance to put our head together and see what scope items need to be shifted around, or where else we need to focus. And then district planning review, including District 3 and 5. I have no problem with including them as part of the review process. As long as we could have, a consolidated group of everybody who reviews our deliverables, I think that would be really good moving forward. We just want to have as many touch points as possible so that coming towards the end of the schedule, there isn't any person or group or agency that's saying, hey, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. So we want to make sure that we're really active on including everybody through all the various steps throughout this project. And I believe I answered all those questions. Lisa, let me know if there's still any that I did not address.
The only thing I ask is, do not take a document before the city council during the 2 months in which they're starting to do budgets and at the holidays. That's the only time.
Which 2 months are those?
Oh, goodness. I want to say May and June, because
June,
those
okay.
are just bad months.
Okay.
And also December is like the worst month, because they literally, their last week they had a city council meeting that was 11.5 hours long.
Oh.
And they
Yeah,
literally got slammed with everything.
Yeah, I had one last week that was 9 hours. I thought that was long. So 11 beats my record.
Mm-hmm. But I thank you very much once again for writing a very well executed document.
I appreciate
very
that.
Understandable, very, I like that. Thank you.
Can I speak to a point that Lisa brought up? And Lisa, one of the things that we do is develop a process diagram that illustrates all of the community activities that are entirely congruent with the technical milestones, because you're right, for the most part, people do not understand where they fit into the process. And so as part of our outreach plan and working with Mike, we'll lay this all out in advance in a very visual way, so that people can tell at a glance where we are in the study and what their role is and how they're going to help inform each of these technical milestones. So it'll be clear. I think my other concern is, I think we need to kind of think through this editorial process, so we now allow enough feedback loops for these documents and everything to be reviewed.
Thanks, Catherine.
And I just wanted to chime in real quick. Our interpreter had to log in and log out again. Isabel, ahorita si puede presionar al canal en español, Emilia estará interpretando. No estaba. Isabel, ¿sí la escuchan?
Sí, estoy escuchando,
Okay,
sí.
we're good. Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions or comments for the team?
Me acabo de unir, no he escuchado mucho de lo que se trató.
Isabel says she just joined. She hasn't heard much of what has happened.
I see Dr. Curry's hand up.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and also for the information. I have a question regarding your data collection process, and how is it that you include the cumulative impacts or effects of what else is in the neighborhood? Could you just speak to how you take into account not only the trucks, but what's currently there, and how that information is included in the document, how it is that you process that information? Thank you.
Yep, that's a great question. So as part of the existing conditions, we'll be looking at who the major truck truck movements are, what those companies are, where they originate, and where they're destined to, and as well as, you know, are there any plans to have any new land uses within the area? So our cumulative analysis will look at, you know, within the short term, are there any major changes that would happen to the current truck route, so that we are planning for that as part of the new truck route map that we're trying to develop. Because things can change from ground conditions today and what it looks like in 5 years. So a lot of that has to deal with reaching out to the city's planning department to see what projects are currently approved and or funded that may not be on the ground today on our accounts, but we'll be able to account for them in future conditions. So we'll be able to get a sense of, you know, what type of project is it, what land use category it falls in, and what that typical traffic generation would look like for that particular development, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I'm also just wondering, in terms of stationary sources of pollution, will those be included as part of your existing conditions?
Yes, any and all information that we have, especially as part of, you know, stationary data, what we'll be including as part of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a clarifying question. In the kickoff meeting where you're talking about all the different public agencies, will that include the CSC and residents and community members overall, or is that really just your kickoff meeting for agencies and
It's the
entities
latter.
that are involved in like FCOG and all of that? That was
Yep,
my
the-
first question. And then the second question is how, just a better description or clarifying, how are you working in tandem with the health analysis study that we're doing? Those are the
Great questions. The first one, kickoff meeting, that one's more for the agencies, you know, getting our bearings for the project. And then we'll have separate meetings, including the community at large as part of our outreach project. But no, the community stakeholders won't be a part of the kickoff meeting. And then working in tandem with the health, we've already had one meeting with the leaders for that project. We want to make sure that we are consistent with what they're doing, that any overlap is, you know, fully disclosed and fully accounted for, that there isn't any conflicting points between the two studies. So we want to make sure that we have consistent check-ins with those project managers to make sure that any information that they're getting is worked into our study and vice versa.
Hey, this is Eric Payne. Is there going to be a summary of an assessment for the scope of work within the first 30 to 90 days, like a 60-30-90 plan that we can review, just to kind of see where we're at with the body of work?
Thanks, Eric. So after the kickoff meeting, I will develop that project work plan, and included in that would be a refined scope of work, and then also a refined schedule that will touch upon those points, especially within that 30, 60, 90-day timeframe you're talking about. Again, we have an overall 18-month schedule, so we'll be providing a more detailed Gantt chart that shows all our critical path items and what our deliverables are going to look like.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
I see Dr. Curry. I think you re-rose your hand.
Yeah, I think part of the question was answered already, but I did notice that one of the plans is to split the stakeholders groups into community groups versus those that are from the trucking community. And I'm curious, in terms of your experience, how has that worked? Whether or not the community voices have been drowned out, or how do you expect to make sure that that community input is included, even as you separate the two groups and hear their different concerns?
Another really good question. I'll start and then Catherine, you could fill in. Most recently, we did the Wilmington freight mitigation study and we had it set up separately as well, where we had a technical advisory group and then we had our community group. We got a lot of consternation about separating those two because the community members were under the impression that we were only looking at, how can we improve truck operations because those businesses were included as part of the technical advisory committee. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen for this project, that we do have some overlap between the two and that we are, full disclosure about the things that we are sharing between the two meetings. So if there's a presentation that goes on in the technical working group, we want to make sure that that same presentation is available for the community advisory group, and it goes back and forth. We want to make sure that everything is transparent and both groups understand their role in developing this implementation plan and Fresno truck reroute map. We just want to be clear between the two what their roles are and how we're going to use those inputs into developing the final plan. Catherine, I don't know if you want to add with anything that you've learned between separating out, those two groups.
Yeah, I agree with Mike in the sense that we want to build trust. I think we need to look at the process very closely as we go through a stakeholder analysis and then refine that process. I know that we said we do 6 community advisory committees, and I'm not redesigning as we talk, but I kind of am, in the sense that maybe we do 3 meetings and then we do 1 joint meeting where everyone can hear what we've learned so far. For example, on existing conditions, maybe that's where one point where we share what we've learned, so both sides hear it and react and observe each other's observations or hear each other's observations. That might be one way to look at key points where we come together.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We could reallocate one of those meetings to have a joint, especially maybe during 2 kind of key parts of the project, which is existing conditions and then the development of the truck reroutes. I think those are 2 natural points to have those joint meetings.
Yeah, thank you. I think that does make sense. I think in your presentation or part of the scope of work, you mentioned that part of the challenge has been mitigating the distrust that communities have in dealing not only with elected officials, but I would say with planning department as well. And so I would really strongly encourage that when you put together the existing conditions, that you really make sure that there's adequate and appropriate input from community on a baseline of what those existing conditions actually are, because that will actually form the basis of whether or not it's viewed as really being valid, or if it's minimizing some of the concerns that community members have expressed over the decades. So I certainly support the idea of doing a joint meeting and anything that increases transparency.
Yep, that is a great point. So typically, and especially in disadvantaged communities, there is that distrust. So we like to start it with conversations, like I said, with resident champions, neighborhood councils, people who have been living there for decades. We want to get their opinion on what is going on and how the conditions look like, and understanding that it's all perspective, and we need to back that with a sound data collection, and then going out and doing field visits ourselves just to verify and confirm what we're hearing from the community.
Yeah, I feel compelled just to say that the distrust is based on lived experience and not just because people are distrustful. It has to do with their experiences and what the environment is and what it has been allowed to become. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for the team? Well, on our end, as far as schedule goes, we are working right now to develop our staff report and contracts and all that stuff that needs to be taken to the city council. Our plan is to get it in front of the city council, hopefully by the meeting on January 27th. If not, the next meeting would be February 10th, I believe. So our goal right now is the 27th. And we will be working through that. As far as some of the questions that came up as far as change orders or procedures on that sort, I will be serving as a project manager on the city side for the project and with Andrina's help. So if there are questions about the project or change orders or anything, we'd appreciate it if you direct those questions to us, just for consistency and not having to go back and forth with Mike or Catherine's team, and just to not have any confusing communication on that end. So if you have questions, like I said, or change order requests, direct those to myself and Andrina. And it'll be, I think the schedule, like Mike said, is about 18 months. So we're hoping to get that done summer 2023, I believe.
So in terms of process, Jill, if we're targeting that kind of end of January city council meeting, basically in terms of the statement of work or scope of work that we just discussed today, I know there was a lot of feedback and discussion, and I think there seemed to be a lot of points that seemed like, you know, this scope of work was sort of general, but as we refine it, once we kind of get started, some of that will be more spelled out, and there sounds like there's going to be a lot of detail, a lot of outline. In terms of the scope of work needed to get the contract signed, I don't know if there was any feeling maybe from IBI or the city of Fresno that the current sort of like high level scope of work needs to be adjusted before we take that, or does it feel like all of the comments that were discussed today, and maybe this is a question for the whole group, means that we can move forward with this scope of work so we can get that contract and kind of all the logistics done by that meeting?
Yeah, with our high level scope, I'm comfortable with moving forward with that. It's just a matter of kind of reallocating resources. So we put kind of a general cap on like number of meetings, or, you know, up to 20, but you know, if that ends up being 16 meetings, we could reallocate that to, you know, a community pop-up, things of that nature. So I'm comfortable with the contents of the high level scope of work in terms of moving forward, getting the contract negotiations done.
I think on our side, we are also.
Okay.
We're comfortable with what's been presented to us, and you know, there's going to be lots of opportunities for refinements and the engagement plans and these you know, regular touch points and progress reports, if you will. So I think we're comfortable moving forward.
Great. So really the next step, as we all know, typically what we've done with these subcommittees is that we of course want to, you know, take it one step and make sure that the full CSC is always aware of kind of the decisions or kind of the actions taken in a subcommittee meeting. So we kind of have two opportunities as just sort of final opportunities to have that discussion with the subcommittee. The reason I say two is that when working with our community co-host for tomorrow night's meeting, and just as a reminder, it's tomorrow night, which is a Tuesday, which I know is awkward, so that's kind of my plug for that. In working with the co-host, we didn't have, based on the discussion that we plan to have tomorrow, we don't have a lot of time for subcommittee updates, but we plan to work with the co-host to send out email quick updates, but we felt like we wanted to reserve time to verbalize some really important decisions that were made. And I think this in particular was the one that we hoped to save a little bit of time on the agenda for tomorrow night. So if that's all right with you all, and Kimberly, our co-host, if we have any volunteers from this subcommittee that would like to be that person to just briefly let everyone know that the scope of work that went out to the whole committee last week was still, you know, with some caveats that, you know, it will be refined later on, that's the scope of work we plan to move forward with. And if there are no objections, then we would just move forward as planned with sort of the contract piece, with the city of Fresno and IBI. So
Hi, Jessica, it's Lisa, real quick. I just don't mean to interrupt you, but
okay.
First off, I would be happy with seeing the Gantt chart, because that'll tell me, as you guys revise everything, your Gantt chart will tell me exactly, the timeline and the steps. I really look forward to seeing that. As far as tomorrow's meeting, we have the Caltrans thing going on, and I think it would be a waste of their time to show up for tomorrow's meeting, and that this briefing would be best put to January. I don't know what my colleagues on the committee think, but I just think tomorrow's meeting is just going to be a very, very intense meeting. And without a Gantt chart to show everybody, that would just, what you're asking people to is agree to basically a trust me, we know what we're doing concept, and we deserve better than that. So I think January would be a much better opportunity. Thank you.
I think to your point too, Kimberly was thinking the same thing when she helped us design the agenda, recognizing that subcommittee meetings or updates might be tight. So kind of maybe I'll go back to the city. As the January meeting is January 14th. I'm gonna mess up what actual date. It's our typical January meeting. So it looks like it would be January 12th, which would be 2 weeks out from the city council meeting. So assuming, folks get, as always, anything they need to review ahead of that January meeting, then if we move it to that meeting. And the thought, Lisa, again, was that it would be like a subcommittee member that would provide the update. We wouldn't have as robust, as a discussion as we had today. It would just sort of be an update on the subcommittee's sort of discussion and decision. But to your point also that, if there does need to be more time for that discussion, I agree that the whole committee deserves a little bit more space than a few minutes. So if that timing still works out to the city, if that makes sense to everyone, that would still leave us time for the 27th, as long as there are no major changes requested.
Yeah, that works fine with us. When I say we're planning for the 27th, our lead time really to get on the 27th is Monday. So if we have to pull it to go to the 10th of February, that's fine. We will just have everything on our end ready to go. So
awesome.
The first meeting we can actually make is the 27th of January.
All right. Well, then to Lisa's point, if there are no other questions or concerns about it from this subcommittee group, then we can just have that update. We will provide, again, as it says in our agenda for tomorrow night's meeting, we'll provide a brief summary of what happened in today's meeting, so that we can, in email format, so that we can focus tomorrow on the robust discussion we plan to have with Caltrans. And then folks will note there that we'll bring it back to the committee to discuss at the January 12th meeting, and we'll note the January 27th goal for the city council on there. So everyone will kind of have a quick update of what's going on. So that's all I had on district logistics side. So Jill or Mike or Catherine, I don't know if you had any other action items or next steps other than meeting with the full committee.
I don't have anything to add. Just want to let everybody know that I am happy to join any other meetings that would be worthwhile for me to sit in. I'm happy to do that.
And on the city side, we're happy to be moving forward and want to get everybody under contract so we can actually start.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Well, if there are no further questions, we can go 5 minutes early, but as promised, we will send a debrief or a little update in our subcommittee debrief email. And otherwise, we will see most of you tomorrow evening for our regular CSC meeting on a special night. So thank you all.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Gracias.